Okay, what I'm going to cover in this video is a couple of points that are confusing for many students in grammar that come up a lot. And these are perfectly reasonable confusions, and they get to a little bit of the quirks of the English language, where two things can look the same, but actually do very different things. So it will look the same on the surface, but unless you're really familiar with it, you won't know that they're actually doing different things. So these are some of the confusing points. Okay, the first one that really catches students is that issue I told you about before when we discussed verbs, but the difference between actions, which are going to be verbs, and activities, which are going to be nouns. They can look exactly the same. These are ing words. A word like running, believe it or not, can be either an adjective, a noun, or a verb. It could be any one of those. Just the fact that it's got an ing on the end doesn't mean it's going to be a verb. It could be an activity. I could say running will make you very fast, or running will make you very fit. That's an activity. It's actually not a verb in that case. Or I can make it into an adjective to modify a noun. If I said the running car is parked outside the movie theater, well, in that case, running is describing the car, what kind of car it is. So you need to be able to make a distinction between an action and an activity. And what you need to do is look if it's acting as the verb or if it's performing as a noun or an adjective. So in the first example, I have Doug is thinking about Donna. Doug is thinking about Donna. Here, the verb is thinking. That's the full verb. And in this case, it actually has a helping verb right in front of it, and it's part of the full verb. So is thinking is a verb. It's something Doug is doing. In this case, thinking is part of the verb. So it's a verb here. It's an action. Okay? The next one, thinking about Donna makes Doug happy. Thinking about Donna makes Doug happy. Thinking here is an activity. It's something Doug is doing. It's action. It doesn't have a subject here. Thinking here is a noun. It's a special kind of noun where actually the verb gets turned into a noun. It's turned into an activity. It's called a gerund. Don't worry about that name. There are gerunds and what are called gerundas. Just know that they look like verbs, but they really are nouns. So right here, thinking about Donna makes Doug happy. The thinking is what's doing the verb of make. The thinking is an activity. It's a noun. Okay? It's again called a gerundive, but it's essentially a noun. So watch out for those. If you think it's a verb, in most cases it's going to have a helping verb in front of it. Is thinking in this case. Is thinking is part of the verb. If you think it's an activity, then it doesn't have a subject. In this case, the noun is the subject, it's behaving as a subject. So that's something that people often get confused between activities and actions. So keep an eye out for those. You don't have to get that one perfectly down, but be aware of it. It will come up again and again and again as you're identifying verbs and other things, and making sure you don't identify a noun as if it were a verb. Okay? The other one that gets confusing are infinitives and prepositional phrases. In this case, again, they look exactly the same. You'll notice thinking looks the same in both cases. You can't tell by looking at them. You've got to think about how they're working in the sentence. With these, also, they look very much the same on the surface. An infinitive is that neutral form of the verb. Okay, it's the neutral form of the verb. It starts with to. All action verbs and all linking verbs have that infinitive form. Okay? And what they look like is to jump, to sing, to be, to act. All linking and all action verbs have that infinitive form. Okay? So to jump, to sing, to be, to act, All of them. Any verb you can think of, you can put it in the infinitive form. That's the neutral form. It doesn't have a subject. You can't say Dougie to sing. It doesn't make any sense. Instead, it doesn't take a subject, but it can carry meaning. If I said Dougie wants to sing, well, okay, now it's something. Want is the verb, but in that case, to sing is the infinitive. In the prepositional phrases, they start with a preposition and end with a noun. Well, in this case, the to is not a preposition for to jump, to sing, and all this, and to be and to act. That's not a preposition. It's part of the infinitive form of the verb. Okay? And these, to a play, to the dog, to Jimmy's house, in all of those cases, to is setting up a prepositional phrase, which starts with a preposition, ends with a noun. Prepositional phrases always start with a preposition and end with a noun. So, play is at the end. To a play, this is a noun. To the dog, dog is at the end, it's a noun. To Jim's house, house is at the end, it's a noun. So to tell the difference between them, look for a verb in the infinitive form. If you see to jump, well, jump is a verb. To jump, that's a verb. Okay. But then you see to a play, well, play in that case is a noun. The little key is, often but not always, but a little clue, I should say clue, a and the show up in prepositional phrases. They can't show up in an infinitive phrase. Okay, they can't show up in an infinitive. They will show up in a prepositional phrase. A, an, and the are articles. They set up nouns. So if you see one of those, you know there's going to be a noun at the end. Bang, it's got to be a prepositional phrase. So those are two areas where you can get confused. Many students get caught up in those. Because actions and activities, watch out for those. Make sure if you think it's a verb that somebody's doing it. Okay? And often you will see a helping verb in front of that verb. Doug is thinking. Then you've got an action. It's a verb. It can be an activity if it's just something you're doing. If it acts as a noun. Thinking about Donna, in that case, this is an activity that Dougie's engaging in, like running, singing, or something else. Thinking here is an activity he's doing, and in fact it's behaving as the subject of the verb makes. Thinking is what makes Dougie happy. Okay? So watch out for that, and then the infinitive and prepositions. If it's got a verb at the end, it's an infinitive. If it's got a noun at the end, it's a prepositional phrase. Little key or a little clue, a, an, or the sets up a noun, it's going to set up a prepositional phrase. So watch out for those two areas when you're identifying parts of speech. They could get a little confusing. There's good reason for it. So if you get confused, there's usually a good reason behind it. And this should help with two of the areas that you'll get confused with, or most folks do get confused with. So this should help clarify. Okay?